Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for episode 1 of IEDC's Higher Education Advisory Committee's 2018 webinar series. This session is designed for IEDC's Higher Education Committee to initiate information sharing among committee members and to highlight exemplary programs in university economic development partnerships. My name is Eli Dial. I'm Associate Editor of IEDC's newsletter, Economic Development Now, and the staff liaison to our Higher Education Committee. Before we begin today, just have a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we're going to share that recording with all committee members after today's presentation for those who couldn't make it. And today's webinar will be a little different from those we've done in the past. We wanted to make it more of a conversation and a peer-to-peer learning experience. So while participants will be muted during the presentation phase, we're going to open up everyone's microphones during the Q&A section to have more of a freewheeling discussion. So yeah, without further ado, we'll go on to the topic of today's discussion, and that's rural entrepreneurship. Going to introduce you now to today's presenter, Lynne Kellerman. He is Associate Dean of Innovation Partnerships and Executive Director for Tech Growth Ohio and the Center for Entrepreneurship at Ohio University. Kellerman is the Executive Director of Tech Growth, public-private partnership managed by Ohio University that provides seed capital and venture development services to startup technology companies and entrepreneurs in Southeast Ohio. Under his direction, as part of the Ohio Third Frontier supported entrepreneurial ecosystem, Tech Growth Ohio has been responsible for nearly $320 million in regional economic activity. Mr. Kellerman also serves as the Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Ohio University, a partnership between the College of Business and the Voinovich School of Leadership in Public Affairs. The Center provides academic programs, experiential student learning activities, and technology commercialization support for faculty and student innovators. The center was awarded the Outstanding Emerging Entrepreneurship Program in 2015 by the United States Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. In these capacities, Lynne Kellerman provides significant leadership to Ohio University and the state of Ohio for important statewide initiatives, including the I-Corps at Ohio program and the Ohio Innovation Fund. Lynne brings decades of venture capital, banking, and economic development experience to these endeavors. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lynne, and we'll hear from him for the next 20 minutes or so. Take it away, Lynne.
All right, thank you, Eli, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I'm going to run through some slides and then look forward to hopefully a robust conversation and a Q&A session. So as Eli said, we're going to end up focusing on Tech Growth Ohio today, but it's really a presentation about a larger rural entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so I think you'll get that as we click through the slides. Eli, I'm trying to forward the slide.
I think you need to use your mouse first in order to get it to sort of wake up.
Okay. Okay. Whoops. Okay, here we are.
Around.
Huh. This is not working.
Can you try clicking the mouse now?
Okay.
Well, if you'd like, we can just advance the slides for you. You just tell us next or to go back.
Okay, that would be great. So I think that we're past the title slide, so next. So what I'd like to discuss briefly today is, first of all, if you're not familiar with Ohio University, I want to give you a quick snapshot of OU. And then the school that houses Tech Growth Ohio, the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. I'll give you a quick snapshot there. And the Voinovich School has really been the driver of many things, but including the university's relationship with IEDC. Dean Mark Weinberg and Jeff Finkel have worked together for many, many years. In fact, Jeff Finkel is here in Athens today. And then I want to drop down into Tech Growth Ohio and talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of mission and scale, what our region looks like, who we collaborate with, you know, what is a venture development practice and how do we do it, and then what are some of the key measurements and spin-outs that we've had from this activity. And along the way, we're going to pick up a number of threads here, so hopefully that will lead to some questions on your half. So next. So Ohio University is headquartered here in Athens. It's a small college town, very beautiful in the hills of Appalachia. Throughout the state of Ohio, we have 11 physical sites. They're either campuses or centers. So OU has grown over time from Southeast Ohio into, we have a presence in Cleveland, in Columbus, and in Dayton, along with the others. We have 37,000 students all in, and that's across all of those campuses, and also some pretty robust online programs that we run. One important statistic that I learned when I first landed here years ago was that 25% of first-year students here at the university are first-generation college attendees from their families, and that's an important reality here in Southeast Ohio and in Appalachian Ohio. OU has been regularly listed as a top-tier research university in the nation based on the federal research dollars we attract, which are not that huge, but what we do with those dollars in terms of licensing and revenue generation. And then lastly, we're noted for research and scholarship in a bunch of areas. I just listed a few of the top ones here. We have a very strong avionics program, biotechnology, communications. We have one of the top schools there. Environmental studies is a big deal down here. And then our fine arts college does some amazing things. And then there are several others I could have listed, but that's a snapshot. We're based in Athens, work primarily throughout Ohio. And the university believes that it has a responsibility not only to its students and faculty, but to the economic well-being of its region, Southeast Ohio, and to the state of Ohio. Next. The Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs is named after Senator George Voinovich. He was a graduate of OU and the only person in the state of Ohio, if not the nation, that he was the mayor of Cleveland, governor of Ohio, and then the senator, U.S. senator from Ohio. And he's recently passed away just less than a year ago. So this is his namesake, and we're trying to do as much positive with it as we can. In the last couple of years, the school's been ranked 39th most innovative public service school in the country. We're regularly in the top 100 best public affairs graduate schools in the country. The really cool thing about the school is that it is outward facing and market facing. So we do a lot of projects with external partners from industry, from government, from foundations and other philanthropic organizations, and of course nonprofits. And then it is one of the few schools that does not operate in a silo. We work across campus and across the university with multiple colleges, and we have long-standing partnerships with the College of Business, College of Health Sciences and Professions, our medical college, and others. And so that's also refreshing, I think. The last 2 years, we have put in place online and executive MPA programs, Master of Public Administration programs, and executive learning programs up at our Dublin campus, which is in Columbus, Ohio. And those have really taken off, and they're both online and in classroom and really hybrid programs, primarily for professionals trying to advance their careers. And then lastly, the school is home to Tech Growth Ohio, which we'll talk about here shortly, but also the Small Business Development Center, which has expanded greatly in the last few years, and the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which covers almost 2/3 of the state. Those two centers provide services to small and mid-sized businesses. And this past year, we've been piloting a social enterprise services program, which I'll also touch on later. So we've got, as strange or as cool as it may sound, we have this whole wheelhouse of business assistance, from technology startups to Main Street small businesses to mid-sized businesses to social enterprises. So that's pretty cool for a public affairs school, we think. Next. All right, so as Eli mentioned, Tech Growth is funded by 3 sources. One, Ohio University, of course. 2, the Ohio Third Frontier Program, which has become nationally renowned for its funding, over $2 billion of funding, and it funds 6 regions in the state to accelerate technology commercialization and startup technology companies. So we're a partner with Third Frontier, and then also private sector organizations such as banks and corporations. And so when you add all of that up, we're just north of $50 million cumulatively over the last 10 years. We've helped nearly 1,800 startups with some form of service or funding. Our main goal that we're measured on is how well do we help our client companies raise additional capital, generate their first sales or revenue, or obtain federal research grants. So how good are we at helping them acquire other resources beyond tech growth? And that's the key measurement for us. We just came off of our best year ever in 2017, where our clients brought in $80 million of resources. And the program to date, we've helped our clients bring in $430 million of resources, which we call impact metrics. And so if we stay on schedule, at the end of 2018, Tech Growth will have brought in $500 million of economic activity to the region through client companies, which in this part of the state is a pretty big deal, and the impact is pretty high in terms of jobs and wages and things like that. Another way we're measured that's related is for every dollar the state puts into the Tech Growth program, how many dollars of economic activity are we generating, like I just discussed, and that comes to $20 for every of economic activity for every $1 the state invests, and so they're very happy with that. We're leveraging public funds in a good way. And then over time, we've created almost 700 jobs, and it's running at an average annual salary of $55,000 a year, and a comparable to that in Southeast Ohio is in the low 20,000s. So these are not only new jobs, but they're much better paying jobs. Next. So this is a visual of where we work. This is 20 counties within Appalachian, Ohio. We partner with a number of organizations across the region. It is a large geographic footprint with little population relative to the rest of the state. I think when you look at Appalachian, Ohio, in total, the land mass is approximately one-fourth to one-third of the state geographically, but the population's only maybe 12 to 15% of the state. So this requires a lot of partnerships and a lot of windshield time. So we work with 4 incubators, and they're located in places like Marietta, Ohio, Zanesville, Ohio, you know, small towns, not large urban areas. We've helped start we've started 3 seed funds. We're on our 3rd, and I can talk more about that, but that's where Tech Growth is actually investing in startup tech companies. We've helped start 3 angel funds. When Tech Growth arrived, there were individual angel investors in Southeast Ohio, but they weren't organized. So we organized them so they could work together and join us in funding the most promising startups. Obviously, we work with higher education, but it's not just OU. We also work with Shawnee State University to the south, with all of OU's branch campuses throughout the region, with Zane State University to the north, Marietta College. So we work to be inclusive of all higher ed in the region. Of course, state government's a big part of this. Increasingly, we hope that foundations and industry will take bigger and bigger roles in this effort. Our region is not rich in those assets, but we have made some inroads. And then lastly, there are a number of local economic development organizations that we work with, and that's really reaching down into the community-based activity and leadership in those towns. So that is a picture of what it takes to pull this off. It takes a lot of good partnerships and doing things together to cover this region, and also to keep innovating and to try to get some network density going that you would see in urban areas where people know each other, things can move quickly, and we can get things, you know, we can get companies started, you know, more efficiently. And so that's, all of that is aimed towards network density. Next. So I put this in here because I wasn't sure how familiar the audience might be with venture development in general. But to us, it includes on the left of this slide some very broad themes, and particularly in a rural area where outreach and education and inclusion are paramount. And we have to do those things all the time to try to find and identify and work with entrepreneurs. And when part of that is we we run pitch competitions throughout the region and host workshops to prepare individuals and teams to compete in pitch competitions. Most of them have some small prize money attached to them. And we also, in various forms, teach the Lean Launch curriculum, which is has been sweeping the country, and it's a way for startup entrepreneurs to engage in real customer discovery and to get out of the building and really assess the market before they spend a lot of time and other people's money launching a startup. So the idea of that curriculum is to see if there's a business model that could work before you launch. And the tools included in that are the business model canvas and the MVP, which is how you first visualize whatever product or service you might want to bring to market. It's a minimal viable product, and that could be a slide or a 3D rendering or just about anything. So that's some of the prep work we do. And as companies get through that, we have a whole bench of executives and entrepreneurs in residence, and we assign one or more of them to work with companies to help refine their business models, to help them think about their marketing, to identify any legal or patent or other issues that they need to address. And for the best of those, we provide what we call growth funding, which is small structured grant support, anywhere from $10,000 to $60,000 or $70,000 that we pay to vendors to either accelerate growth or remove barriers. So the companies don't get the money, but we pay for services to help them accelerate. And then for the best of those, they might receive seed stage capital investment from us, maybe some co-investment from angel funds. And then we hope that we can help them attract additional human and financial capital. Usually the founder will need a CEO or a COO or a CFO. But usually human capital and finding that and attracting and training that is an issue. And then we go outside and try to help the high growth companies raise venture capital, venture bank debt, other types of financing to help them continue to grow. So that's kind of a picture of the services and investment and talent work that we do. And it also kind of resembles the funnel of how we work with a lot of companies at the beginning, and then fewer and fewer kind of make their way down the funnel as you get closer to attracting capital. So I hope that provides a general framework for what in the heck venture development is, at least to us. Next. So on the right-hand side is just a dashboard that we use to measure. It's one of many dashboards we use to measure ourselves over time and in categories that I mentioned before. How well are we doing with our companies to raise capital? How well are we doing to help them get their first sales or continue to grow their revenue? And how well are we helping them to get other resources that might be federal research grants or whatnot? And we have goals each year, and you know, at the top you can see it on a cumulative basis how we've grown over time, and then the bottom is kind of how did we do in 2017. And this wasn't the last snapshot, but we ended up hitting all of our goals, which we don't always do, but this year in 2017 we did. And it just gives you an idea of the discipline that we have and accountability for ourselves, but also with outside funders. And then over the years, you know, we think we have developed a very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem in Southeast Ohio. And Tech Growth is not only part of that, but has actually helped either start or strengthen a number of other entities that are active in the region. So it's not just Tech Growth anymore. For example, if you go to the lower left, Ohio University has had an innovation center, which is an incubator, business incubator for many years. But it wasn't until Tech Growth came around where the services provided to those tenants really stepped up the game. And so the quality of services is better. And I think that on any given month, as many as 85–90% of the tenants in our incubator are also Tech Growth clients. We started the Center for Entrepreneurship in 2011, and that was me and a couple of Tech Growth people. We partnered with the College of Business, and we organically started the center, which is student-oriented. It did not exist before, and the center provides students with an opportunity to get a major in entrepreneurship or a certificate in entrepreneurship. And it's really targeted not just to business students, but to all kinds of students at any college across campus. Moving down the list, we were one of 6 universities that started the I-Core at Ohio program. It's the first statewide program that is not NSF funded, that is focused on providing lean launch curriculum and experiential learning to teams of researchers and students trying to commercialize university intellectual property. In Ohio, we have 17 public research universities and 2 private. So teams apply from all of those schools every year. We just started our 4th summer cohort today. And OU typically has 2 to 4 teams in any given cohort. So Tech Growth works with them before, during, and after the program. We spent 4 or 5 years with Ohio State University to start a new venture fund, the Ohio Innovation Fund. That is nearly a $50 million early stage venture fund. That was quite an undertaking for 2 universities to work together and put that together. It's off to a great start. It's entering its 3rd year, and our fund manager was an Ohioan in Silicon Valley. We recruited him back to Ohio, and he's made 9 investments already. And then we work with our tech transfer office on a tech validation and startup fund where small grants are made to our research teams through a competitive process again. And we have venture capitalists and business folks on the selection committee. And so it's competitive, and it's trying to provide $50,000 to $150,000 of grants to advance research while it's still here at the university, so it can get prepared for some of the other programs I mentioned. And then lastly, not much more than a year ago, we spun out from Tech Growth, sort of the same venture development practices that I just went through a slide or 2 ago, in an effort to apply those practices to social enterprises, whether they be for-profit or not-for-profit, also including foundations. And the pilot has gone very well so far, convincing us that it's not just businesses that need these types of service. So that looks like an unmet need in the region that we're pushing forward on. Next. And then lastly, just as an example of what really counts for us, it's not just the numbers and the stats that I talked about, but it's also the stories. And I know we're onto something when I'm on the board of directors of a company, and I'm going to a board meeting, and the parking lot is so full that the board members can't find parking. This is one such example. Global Cooling Inc. It manufactures technology-driven ultra-low temperature freezers, and because of the energy savings of their technology, they have become disruptive to that market. People that use that product are research labs, large pharmaceutical corporations, etc. So it's a healthy market, and we felt was in need of disruption. And a big part of the value proposition is the energy savings with our new technology. Had to shut the window. So Tech Growth invested first. Later on, we brought in a venture bank, a venture fund, and we've always co-invested with angel investors throughout the region. And last year, this company had a very successful year. It grew its top line revenue 76%, so that's tremendous growth. And they now have 100 employees. And importantly, they, at this high-tech industrial manufacturing company, they employ 70% of their employees come from either right here in Athens County or 4 adjacent counties. And those are not only OU grads, but community college graduates, et cetera. So it's a great employment story here in the region. Next. Prior to this meeting, we were talking about how many Bobcat graduates were floating around with IEDC or SSTI or different organizations that we work with. And they are out there, lots of Bobcats. So on behalf of the Ohio Bobcats, I'm pleased to have shared this information with you, and would be happy to join a discussion and try to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lynn, for that great presentation. So at this time, we're going to start opening up everybody's microphone for the Q&A section of this webinar. That'll take just a minute or two, but I will ask, so if you can just keep your phone muted until you have something to say, just so we can cut down on the background noise, that will be appreciated. I'll start just with a question while we're getting everybody with their microphones. Since we're an economic development association, I'm interested, like for you and your work, what is it that you wish economic development would do? How can they make your work?
Eli, I'm getting a lot of static here.
Yeah, sorry, if everybody that's on the webinar now, if you can just mute your phone until you have a question, and then that sounds a lot better.
Yeah. So could you repeat, Eli?
Sure. Yeah, just from, I wanted to ask, in your work with economic developers, what is it that you wish they did better? Like, how could they make your job easier?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think since Tech Growth is so technology oriented, I think that it's been a real lift to try to add to the economic development equation technology opportunities, as opposed to sort of just Main Street or just traditional economic development. And I think we've made some progress, but that tends to not be top of mind, at least with the local agencies and groups that we work with. But I think it fits into the mix in many ways. So that's a challenge. We're making progress, but I think especially in a rural area, you can imagine that technology startups are not necessarily top of mind in terms of how to turn around your community or how to improve your community. So through the partnerships and collaborations I mentioned, we've really been pushing that, not as the end game for everybody, but just as it's a great arrow to have in your quiver. But that's not without its challenges, but I think especially in a rural environment. And then part of the argument for that is when we have a successful startup, and trust me, we have a lot of failures too, but they do tend to produce much higher paying wages. And if the technology is good, there are many opportunities and markets for it to enter. So it can be, not always, but it can be a more rapid growth and sustainable business opportunity. So, the higher wages, new jobs in the new economy, those are the types of things we're chasing. And I think they can marry well with more traditional economic development. Some of the goals are the same.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lynn. And anybody else that's on the webinar now, if you want to unmute and pose a question, go right ahead. Yeah, I have another question, Lynn. In the meantime, I think a lot of places that want to invest in entrepreneurs, there's anxiety that as soon as their business is successful, they'll uproot, move to a bigger city. I can imagine that might be a challenge for you. So I guess how do you and your partners work to keep startups rooted in Southeast Ohio?
I think that we've done our best to try to make this area as sticky as possible, in quotes, so that there are enough services, enough sense of community, enough networks where there's less and less reason to leave. And I think we do find businesses that are here because they want to be here. And as long as they have competitive services and access to networks, as they would in an urban area, they're very happy to be here. And often their impact in this region is so much greater than it would be in an urban area that they're not just a small fish in a bigger pond. They don't get overlooked. They tend to get a lot of attention here. So those are a couple of things. In those organizations I had put up on one of the slides where, it's not just nice to have, we think. It's like rural regions really have to have entrepreneurship services, and they have to have access to capital, and they have to have access to talent. And so that's what we're trying to do. Having said that, I think we succeed much more often than we fail, but we have had a couple of companies decide to leave and ended up on the West Coast or in another urban area because that was just unequivocally the best thing for them. It made sense for them to do that, and to really succeed, they needed to do that. So it's not a binary sort of game. It's but it is an issue from time to time, and we can't control the outcome there. All we can do is make our environment the best we possibly can so that there are fewer and fewer reasons to leave and more reasons to come here.
Yeah, great. We have a question from a participant. They typed it into the chat box. They're asking about your economic impact. You mentioned for each dollar invested, there's $20 in economic activity generated. How do you calculate that impact of parameters you use?
Engagement. Go to member engagement.
Somebody is not on mute.
sorry, was there a question from one of the participants? Or? Yeah, if I could just remind everyone to just mute your microphone if you don't have a question immediately. But,
so Eli, to answer the question from the comment box, we by our funders are required to calculate key metrics in the following areas, which is how much revenue do our clients generate, and how much capital, non-state, non-tech growth capital, but other capital, private or otherwise, how much capital have they acquired, and then how many, bank loans or federal research grants, all of those types of resource acquisition metrics, we collect that quarterly and report that quarterly, and that's done on a quarterly, annual, and cumulative basis. And so those are the key metrics that we are required to produce for our funders, and they're pretty good indications of how well our clients are doing. If they're not producing any revenue, they're not paying any taxes, they're not hiring anybody, so on and so forth. If they're not raising capital, they're probably not growing very fast, and so on and so forth. So they're interrelated metrics, but we use Salesforce.com and Tableau software to track and put those metrics into dashboards. And so we're pretty disciplined about what we're chasing and how it adds up.
Great. And just some breathing room if anybody wants to jump in. This format can be a little unwieldy, but yeah, if anybody has a question, go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure. Yeah, who's that
Hi.
there?
Hi, this is Jana Jones from the University of Idaho.
Hey, Jana.
Hi. Hey, Lynn, just a couple of questions on how your whole Tech Growth Ohio and the Center for Entrepreneurship got started. Was it looking around the university and pulling together these programs that were probably operating in other locations, like through the business school, or was it started and then these different programs and services were added over time?
For both of those, to both Tech Growth and the Center for Entrepreneurship, we had the advantage of purely clean startups. Those services were not being provided. There were no similar programs at any other college. So we had a good, clean start. We didn't have baggage from past practices. And so there's a pro and a con there. These were true, clean, organic startups with no necessarily no experience on the part of the university at large. So that took a lot of tenacity and pitching and explaining. It also took the ability to go to nearly every other college and to senior administration to elevate these things to a high level so that it was not just a college or two colleges behind them, but these services were intended for the entire university and the entire region of Southeast Ohio. So I'm pleased that we had that route to go. There were times when I wish we had had some prior history just to have made the startups easier, but in most ways it was good not to have the baggage. One example that I learned was that in years past, and this is not to offend anybody, but a lot of entrepreneurship programs at universities were 1 or 2 decades ahead of us. and they had typically started them as just purely academic programs with majors, minors, certificates, and they were typically stuck in the management department of the business college. And so having seen that, our aspiration was to not do that, to certainly you want the business college heavily involved, but we wanted it to start from the beginning to be across campus and to have a broader purpose than just classroom learning. So those two were organic startups, and it couldn't have happened, on the other hand, without support from so many of the other colleges and senior administration here at the university.
So just one quick follow-on question. So when the whole idea was starting, did you have one champion, or was there a group that got together and saw this need?
I think as far as champions, I'd first call out the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. And as strange as that might sound, they have been a real champion for many years in the economic development for the region, because they're so outward looking, interested obviously in policy, but very engaged. It's a very engaged college and always has been. And so I think the Voinovich School gets a big nod for being so outward looking and market facing all the time, whether that's, you know, business oriented things, or it might be government oriented things, or it might be not-for-profit things. And then on top of that, the dean of the Voinovich School and the business college have had a 12 to 15 year long-standing relationship where the two colleges have innovated and taken risk and done things together. And often the two colleges together then are able to bring in other colleges and senior administration. So it kind of went like that. I wish I could say it was all planned out and worked according to plan. Some of this was serendipity, some of it was opportunism, and a lot of it was having the right people in the right place at the right time as an institution.
Thank you.
Great question.
Well, yeah, I have another question, Lynn, unless anybody else wanted to cut me off. But yeah, one of the things we're working on with the higher ed committee is just finding ways to, it's hard for EDOs and business sometimes to work with their university just because there really is no front door. Like, there are all these different departments, and it's often confusing, like where do you even start? Do you have insight from an organization that has all these partners and has broken down these silos? Do you have insight on how universities can better open themselves up to the community?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I'm here. I was on the outside of this university, and I've been around the block with a number of universities where I know how challenging it can be for an outsider to make the right contact or go through the right door. Again, in this particular case, we had the Voinovich School, the public affairs school was this outward-looking window, and would actually not only have its ear to the ground as to what the region needed or what could be done, but would also help circulate and introduce people and ideas and programs into the university. And in that way, I think the school has played a great role for a pretty good sized university where it can get complex. And I think every university is different, at least the ones I know. So there might be a window or a door like the Voinovich School, but it might be a different sort of door at any given university. Some universities have set up tech commercialization offices, and they that's a slightly different approach to this, but those can be open doors as to where you want to go, especially if you're an entrepreneur. And again, I think from what I've seen, universities are so different, but I think it is good to find the outward-looking, market-facing units that are at the universities and ask them to help you navigate. And again, it depends on, at least in my experience, it depends on the leadership at the university and at the colleges. And I've been fortunate to have the right leaders at the right time and in the right place for my whole stay here. So I have no complaints, but I don't think there's a generic answer across all universities either.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, and another thing I was wondering about, you know, the Kauffman Foundation, one of their fundamentals for entrepreneurial ecosystems is density, and so, you know, for an organization such as yours that has such a wide geographic scope, I guess, how do you reduce the distance between entrepreneurs and the funding mechanisms and other support programs that you provide?
Right. Well, I think technology in the last several years has helped a lot, but I think the willingness to engage and creatively with external partners throughout the region, which often requires an educational, you know, long-term dialogue, but to engage other partners. So, our goal is any entrepreneur with an idea on the back of a napkin could engage it with any one of our 12 collaborators, and we'll get them to the right service. You know, they don't have to know the entire ecosystem. They just have to knock on any door, and we'll do our best to find the right service for them. Sometimes it's tech growth. Sometimes it's our small business development center. Sometimes it's our incubator. You know, it just depends on what that particular entrepreneur is trying to do. So that's our goal. I think we're pretty good at it. And I think with a little bit more density, we've been able to increase the velocity of how quickly things can happen. However, I'm still humbled when I go back to urban areas where I've lived all my life, and I look at what's happening in Cleveland or Columbus or other parts of the country, and I'm envious because of the deal flow and the almost built-in density that they have. But they have other challenges, and actually are competitive sort of within their own cities. So, you know, the rural environment is different. We recognize that. I don't think we're going to get to the density and velocity that you would have in a big city, but I've always thought we could do a heck of a lot better than what existed when I came here.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think, well, we have just 5 minutes left, so I want to just say this is your last chance to pose a question to Lynne. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Well, yeah, with that, Lynne, I want to thank you again for sharing your insight with us today, and thank you to all the members of the Higher Education Advisory Committee that could join us for this presentation. We're going to be doing more of these. This is the first in a series this year. So we're going to be letting everyone know once we have the next one scheduled, and we'll be sure to keep everybody in the loop. We'll do at least 2 more, maybe 3, depending how things go. So keep an eye on your emails from me. And yeah, on behalf of IEDC and the Higher Education Advisory Committee, thank you everyone for joining us today for this presentation. And we hope to see you on another IEDC webinar or some sort of function we're doing around the country at some point in the future. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, Lynn.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time and wish you all the best out there.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.